The night everything began, the city lights outside my office window looked like 1,000 silent witnesses, glowing without mercy, watching my life hang by a thread. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the weight of a truth I had avoided for years. By morning, if nothing changed, I would lose my inheritance, my family name, the company my father built with his own blood and breath, and the last fragile connection to a man who had loved me the only way he knew how. I needed a baby. Not someday. Not eventually. I needed a child now, or everything would collapse. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that change hearts, please pause for a moment and like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, The Kindness Chronicles. Your support keeps stories like this alive. I had never imagined my life would be reduced to a single impossible condition written in cold legal ink. My father's will had been clear and unforgiving. The company would remain mine only if I produced an heir within 1 year of his death. He had believed blood was continuity, that legacy required flesh and breath. I had called it cruel when I first read it, but grief had numbed me then. Now, standing at the edge of that deadline, cruelty had a sharper name, fear. I was not a bad man, but I was a lonely one. My marriage had ended quietly, without scandals, without shouting, just two exhausted people admitting they had grown into strangers. There had been no children, only promises postponed until time ran out. After the divorce, I buried myself in work, convincing myself success could replace everything else. It never did. Success only made the silence louder. That was when she entered my life again, not as fate, but as an unexpected reminder of humanity. She worked at one of the company's charitable foundations, a woman whose presence softened rooms hardened by money and power. She was calm, intelligent, and carried grief with dignity. She had lost her husband years earlier, along with the child she had been carrying. The tragedy had not broken her, it had made her quieter, deeper, and profoundly compassionate. I had always respected her from a distance, never imagining I would one day stand before her, stripped of pride, asking for something that could change both our lives forever. When I finally told her the truth, without dramatics, without excuses, I felt smaller than I ever had. I explained the will, the deadline, the inheritance that would vanish if I failed. I admitted my fear, my selfishness, and my desperation. I said I needed a baby, not out of convenience, but because I was about to lose everything I had been raised to protect. I did not ask immediately. I waited, allowing the silence to stretch, giving her space to walk away. She did not leave. She listened, not with judgment, but with a sadness that reflected her own history. When she finally responded, it was not with anger or rejection. She said there would be a condition. Her voice was steady, her eyes unflinching. Whatever this arrangement would be, it would not be built on lies, control, or abandonment. She would not be a solution to a problem. She would be a partner in a responsibility greater than both of us. That condition changed everything. We agreed to something that looked simple on paper but felt enormous in reality. No secrecy, no pretending for the world while hiding the truth from ourselves. If a child came into this world, they would be loved openly, not as a legal requirement but as a human being. She demanded respect, independence, and a future that did not revolve around my fears. And most of all, she insisted that if at any point the child became a burden instead of a blessing, the arrangement would end. No money, no inheritance, no company was worth damaging a life that I agreed, though I was terrified. Not of the condition, but of the mirror it held up to my soul. The months that followed were some of the hardest of my life. There were no romantic montages, no cinematic shortcuts. There were doctor's visits filled with quiet hope and quiet disappointment. There were nights when I sat alone in my house, realizing how empty it truly was, and mornings when I questioned whether I deserved the chance I was being given. Through it all, she remained steady, grounded, reminding me, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully, that this was not about saving a company. It was about becoming worthy of a child. When the first test failed, something inside me cracked. I had prepared myself for loss in business, for betrayal in boardrooms, but not for this kind of vulnerability. She saw it immediately. Without speeches or dramatic gestures, she showed up, sometimes with silence, sometimes with presence, and taught me that strength did not mean control. It meant endurance. As time passed, something unexpected happened. I began to change. I listened more. I slowed down. I started noticing the people around me, the employees whose lives depended on decisions I made without thinking, the communities our foundation served, the small moments of kindness I had overlooked for years. The fear that once drove me started to loosen its grip, replaced by something unfamiliar but powerful, responsibility rooted in care, not obligation. Then, on an ordinary afternoon, the impossible became real. The confirmation came quietly, without fireworks, but it felt like the world had exhaled after holding its breath for months. I did not celebrate immediately. Instead, I sat alone in my car and cried, not from relief about the inheritance, but from the overwhelming realization that a life was beginning because of choices I had made when I was most afraid. Pregnancy changed everything again. Not just her body, but our understanding of each other. There were moments of tension, moments of doubt, and moments when the past threatened to poison the present. Her fears resurfaced, memories of loss, of hospitals, of goodbyes that came too soon. Mine did too, the fear of failing as a father, of repeating my own father's mistakes, of loving something I could lose. But something stronger than fear held us together. Honesty. Patience. The shared understanding that neither of us was perfect, but both of us were trying. As the due date approached, the company crisis that had once seemed like the center of my universe faded into the background. The board meetings, the legal documents, the inheritance clause, all of it felt smaller now. I still cared, but differently. I had learned that legacy was not preserved through blood alone, but through values passed on deliberately, daily, imperfectly. The night the baby was born, time lost its meaning. I remember the quiet intensity of that moment, the way the room felt suspended between fear and miracle. When I finally held my child, I understood something my father never could put into words. Control had never been the point. Love was. In the months that followed, life did not become easier, but it became fuller. Sleepless nights replaced late meetings. Laughter echoed where silence once lived. She and I navigated a relationship that defied simple labels, not a fairy tale, not a contract, but something honest and evolving. We were two people who had met at the edge of loss and chosen to build something fragile and real. The inheritance issue resolved itself quietly. The deadline passed, the conditions met, the company secured. But by then, it hardly mattered. I had already gained something no document could guarantee. A reason to be better. A reason to stay. Years later, I would watch my child run through the same halls I once walked as a frightened boy, and I would understand that everything I thought I was saving had actually been saving me. The condition she set that night, the one that had terrified me, had been an act of kindness disguised as strength. She had forced me to choose love over fear, responsibility over entitlement, humanity over legacy. And that choice changed everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even desperate beginnings can lead to beautiful transformations, please like, comment, and share this video, and subscribe to The Kindness Chronicles. Your engagement helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Special request before we end, please comment below and tell us what kindness means to you, or which moment in this story stayed with your heart the longest. Your words matter more than you know.